Hey there, my name's Peter Fayroian, and I have the great fortune of being Greenhills head of school. And one of the things that I've enjoyed doing for a number of years now is having conversations with our alums who are out doing amazing things in the world and asking them questions about what they're doing and a little bit about themselves and tying it back to Greenhills. It's been super fun to do this, and today is no exception. And I am actually flanked by our alums and also soon to be alums as well. And to my right are current Greenhills students Nicole Zhong and Parini Rao. And on my left are graduates Jennifer Conlin, class of 1979, who is our District 48 state representative to the House, and Chris Watson, class of 2010, who is our city council person from Second Ward in Ann Arbor. And I'm going to kick this off, Nicole and Parini, just with a question for each of you, or actually just a request that maybe you just tell us a little bit about your trajectory upon graduation, your travels, and how it took you to where you are now and what you're doing for all of us as not just as ambassadors for Greenhills, but also in helping our state and city be better places for all of us.
Well, thank you, Peter, for the kind introduction, and thank you for having us. After I graduated Greenhills, I started at Yale University. I went straight through, and I studied economics partially because of the teaching I had at Greenhills, where I got to take an AP economics class taught by Mr. Kinnear. And that really prepared me. I always felt prepared in my AP. I always felt prepared in my economics coursework. And then I also worked for Students for a New American Politics Political Action Committee. It's the largest political action committee, student-run political action committee in the country. So what we did is we funded internships on political campaigns for students, so they didn't have to take an unpaid summer working on campaigns. They could actually be paid, and our goal was to broaden the pool of people working in politics, so it could be more diverse, people from low incomes and people with minority backgrounds. I was actually the recruitment director, so that got me on the side of kind of federal politics, getting people involved in congressional races. But after the 2012 election, I have to be honest, I got pretty disillusioned with politics. In the age of Mitch McConnell, in the age of obstruction, I said, politics, I don't think it's for me. So I kind of doubled down on my economic studies. I did work in econometrics and data science, and that basically led me to a job here in Ann Arbor at the American Mathematical Society, where we compile a database of the current mathematical research and sell that to PhDs and universities all over the country. Part of the decision to come back to Ann Arbor, too, was just simply a love for the town, wanting to return to somewhere I felt supported, and also wanting to be close to my family here. So finally, just getting into politics part of it, it was just a matter of stepping up, a matter of feeling like I had something to contribute. First, that started with getting elected to the board of my church, St. Andrew's here in Ann Arbor, where the breakfast program feeds meals to people in need every day of the week, year round. And then from there, this past April, about a year ago today, I decided to run for city council, collected the signatures, and I had the greatest blessing in politics, which is to be able to run unopposed. After I announced, the Thursday after I announced, my opponent dropped out, and I was able to step up into the role.
Well, I think you would have won anyway.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, it's great to have you back. Jennifer.
Well, and because he didn't have a primary, he did a lot of door knocking for my race, which I appreciate very much, Chris, because that's how we met. I graduated, obviously, a long time before you in 1979. And as I think Peter just told you, my parents founded the school. So I got to be one of those earlier classes graduating from Greenhills. But I had fantastic English teachers here. And Mr. Reich actually taught English back then. And I also had Mrs. Dan, Aurelia Dan, who taught history and world history, which was amazing because I ended up going on to become an international journalist. So I thought about Mrs. Dan a lot. In fact, we connected a lot over the years. And anyway, when I graduated from Greenhills, I went to the University of Michigan, undergrad, English major, worked a bit on the Michigan Daily and the yearbook at U of M, and then went to graduate school and got a master's from Northwestern University in their Medill School of Journalism. I immediately moved to New York and started a career began as a legal journalist, a business journalist, moved to DC, did some political reporting, reported on the Supreme Court a bit, and then moved overseas. My husband also was a journalist, and we moved to what was supposed to be 2 years abroad, and we were gone for 20 years. So we were in Europe for most of that time, London, Brussels, and Paris, and then ended up in Egypt. He worked for Reuters news agency, and we ended up in Cairo and took 3 children with us who were, in high school at the time, middle school and high school, and were hoping to be there for 5 years, and instead had to leave because the Arab Spring was erupting, and as much as you want to be there as a journalist, not a great place to be with 3 children when there's that kind of unrest, civil unrest happening. So that's how we ended up back in Michigan. I called my mother and said, you've wanted us to move back for a while. How about tomorrow? Because it was a little bit of a situation. And Greenhills very kindly, and Peter took 2 of our younger children and who had never even gone to school in America or had an American education. They'd only had a British one, and they came here. So that's why Greenhills is so special on so many levels. But when that happened, I came back. I covered Detroit and kind of the revitalization going on in 2012 for the New York Times, is who I mostly wrote for over the years, and ended up covering Detroit for them. I got a National Endowment for the Arts grant to cover arts and culture in Detroit, and ended up working at U of M in communications for a bit, and for 6 years, more than a bit. And then about a year and a half, 2 years ago, decided to return to just straight journalism and freelancing, and was called by the New York Times to cover the Oxford school shooting. And it was so I was one of the first reporters there. I had never covered a school shooting. I'd covered, some pretty tough stories in my time, but not that kind of story. And 2 days of covering that straight made me start to think, maybe I should be doing something else at this point in my life. And I think, you asked the universe, because I wasn't thinking at all politics. And then I got a call about 4 weeks later, would you think of running for state representative in this new district? And I had never thought of running. And so I said that, but then here I am. Now I'm a state representative. So that's how I came to be in local politics.
It just occurred to me that we have something in common in that we've all left Greenhills and have come back to Ann Arbor. So let that be a lesson to you. After you leave, go other places, but come back. Yep. So I'm going to turn it over to you 2 now. Why don't you start, Nicole?
Yeah. So I have a question for both of you, actually, and you did kind of touch on it a little bit already, but I want to know what inspired you to join politics, or your interest in politics? Was it perhaps a club, an experience, or what you observed in the world around you?
Well, fortunately, it's actually both. So I come from a family with pretty much a strong history of public service. My dad worked for the state of Michigan as a forensic psychologist. So that part of me, the idea of state service and of politics as service, that always was part of my upbringing. And the idea that government can be a force for good was kind of just instilled in me growing up. But it was actually Greenhills that made me think, kind of pair that with action. So the first part of it, I think, was really in 8th grade. Mr. Jones, my excellent civics teacher, he would really break down almost all the facets of American government, from the Electoral College and the primary system to, the 3 branches of government, even talking about specific Supreme Court cases in 8th grade. Then I think when you talk about clubs, when you talk about what did Greenhills kind of do to get me out in the world, the things I see around me, It was the service learning program here at Greenhills. That was the first thing. It got me involved at the Green Baxter housing project here in Ann Arbor with the Green Baxter housing community. There was a tutoring program in the summer, and Gail Wolkoff, our service learning director, said, hey, if you want to do this after your sophomore year, this could be a great way to get service hours. And when I got there, it just showed me so much. There were many first-generation immigrants to America living there. There were black and brown people, just to be honest, people that looked like me. And I saw that it was federal money. It was federal money in the form of housing vouchers that made that community really work. And it was walking distance from my house. And it's a model for housing all across the nation, founded in 1969. So that was a big way that Greenhills got me in the world. And then finally, actually, Greenhills gave me the opportunity to found a student club. I got to found, in 2008, Greenhills Students for Obama. That was really a moment where we all got swept up. I got out on doors, got knocking doors. I became the canvas chair in Ward 2, and honestly, I've been knocking doors ever since. So I think that's really the path that led me here.
Yeah, so for me, I was on student council at Greenhills, so, but I had no real experience in politics at that point. I worked on one Republican campaign. I'm a Democrat now, but congressional campaign in high school, I think, or when I was younger. And then I think for me, just living abroad as I did for so long, you really are very aware that you're an American because you're living overseas, and you very quickly get to know the other Americans living overseas, whether they're corporate expatriates, journalists, or even the military. You spend a lot of time, especially when you have babies overseas, going to the embassy and getting documents. And so carrying that American passport, it really means something. And especially when you're in a third world country, when you're in Egypt and you need to get out quickly, you're quite happy to have that passport. But also, I think that I just, living abroad as well, Republicans and Democrats all got along. Like we would even share election night. We would be at the embassy parties together. Democrats abroad and Republicans abroad. We'd give each other a hard time. We'd want Clinton to win, not Bush, but we'd all be at the same party. So I think I became more patriotic than I might have been if I just stayed in America by being overseas and representing your country overseas. But then coming back 12 years ago, I was covering Detroit and really kind of seeing the injustices in Detroit up close. And there was a lot of activity to help downtown Detroit, but I was spending a lot of time in the neighborhoods that were really not getting and still aren't getting the attention they need. And so that got me sort of thinking more politically. As a New York Times reporter, you really are not supposed to take part in politics. It's an ethics issue. And so I would try to be super careful about not being political in any kind of way that would be noticed, never posting on Facebook, never participating in any kind of really upfront way. But then when Trump won, and there was the Women's March in DC, and my daughter was organizing the bus that took all the U of M students down to DC to march. I couldn't help myself, so I did march in that. And then for Hillary, and I did against Trump in that race, I did do some door knocking and kept calling the New York Times and telling them Michigan is, I can tell you firsthand now, Michigan is going to go to Trump. I could see it. I was on doors the whole week before the election. It was very obvious to me that Hillary was not going to win. So I think I just started to think that way more and more, that I wanted to be involved in politics, and you really can't do that if you're going to be, especially writing for the New York Times. So when the Oxford school shooting happened and I saw up close what gun violence can do to a community and how it affects an entire community, I just started to think differently about what I kind of wanted the next part of my career to look like, or the last part of my career, because I'm at that age. And so when the phone call came, it was a big decision to run because it meant ending particularly writing for the New York Times. And they called and said, we need you to get to Macomb County and cover the Trump rally. And I said, I've got some news for you. I'm running for office. and they're like, oh my gosh, good luck, congratulations, but this is the end of your 30 years of writing for us. And even if I were to have lost my race, I don't think I would have been allowed to write for them again, because I would have, declared myself a Democrat, obviously publicly, maybe in 5 years' time. But that was one of the biggest decisions I had to make, was to give that up. So I'm glad I won. Because now I get to do some really make change.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Parini.
Yeah, kind of going back to your time at Greenhills, do you feel that, like, once you guys left Greenhills and went on to college, did you find yourself, like, better prepared in terms of, like, English writing, in terms of, like, team, kind of, like, a sense of community feel at Greenhills? Did you feel, like, more prepared for, like, what you faced in college because of it compared to your peers?
100%. It was just a truism at Greenhills. It was broadly spoken here that you cannot leave Greenhills without knowing how to write. And it was true. I think it was Mr. Fayroian, in our English program here, it was basically, the idea was that in any career you have, you're going to need to write. And that started right in college. Even in, I took a biology class on evolutionary biology, and we had to write tight lab reports and a tight paper at the end of it. So that came in. I think the other thing was just the access to AP classes, the standards that teachers expected of you, the preparation. I mean, I think in my math and science classes, it was just the fact that we were consistently expected to work, to keep up with coursework, to do tests, to keep up with 5 or 6 things at the same time, at a high level, that serves you very well in college. And that, I guess, reward you feel at the end of the day of saying, like, I studied for the test, I took the test, I came in listening and asking questions. I think Greenhills encourages that probably more than anywhere. And an Ivy League school, among people who had gone to, the Exeters and Andovers and some of even the best public schools in terms of Thomas Jefferson and in Virginia, you felt, I felt, hey, listen, I'm here just like them, and I felt just as prepared, and it bore out in the way the classes went. I felt ready.
Yeah, no, I really remember, I think it was my 7th grade English class, learning to write really tightly, and I think it was maybe Yates who wrote, "Sorry for the long letter, I didn't have time to write a short one." Because it's actually really hard to write really tightly, and so for me, that lesson began at Greenhills, and then as a journalist, you don't have a lot of space all the time. And, your editor would be like, that's a lovely piece, cut it by half in an hour, or 20 minutes. So there's that skill I definitely developed at Greenhills. Also, I think Greenhills, when I was here, was even smaller. There were 52 kids in my senior class. So we really had these relationships that I know you have with your teachers, and I think that kind of relationship with people who are teaching you, I did take to Michigan, which is a very big school. I actually started at a women's college in Massachusetts, Mount Holyoke, and transferred to Michigan because Mount Holyoke did feel kind of small to me. After Greenhills, I think I did want a bigger experience. But then I was really, it was really easy for me to approach all my professors and turn even U of M, which is such a huge place, into a kind of more intimate kind of experience for myself because of that. And also at Greenhills, you can try anything. It's not a big school where you're not allowed to try out for the lead in the play and so it was, again, something where I'd sort of not be intimidated to go and, join the Michigan Daily or join, a choral group, which I did. So I think there was a lot of tons that came from my Greenhills experience that I've taken in that's worked in my entire life, that are skills I got here.
Nicole.
Yeah, so I have a specific question for you, Ms. Conlin. So I actually run my own political blog, and I think it's really cool that you were a journalist for the New York Times, and you did all kinds of reporting. So I'm curious, how and why did you decide to make that pivot? And how did being a journalist best influenced you for your role now?
Right. So when I decided, when I was leaving Oxford and had this horrible ride home after covering the, children's candlelight vigil in this park in Oxford, I just was thinking all the way home, there must be more I can do at this point. There just must be. And when this call came, it was interesting. I got a phone call from fellow city council member of yours now, who I had worked with at the University of Michigan, who said, "Have you ever thought of going into politics?" And I said, "No." And but we started talking, and in particular, obviously the whole country was redistricted because of the census, but here in Michigan we had a very special redistricting that came out of the Voters Not Politicians ballot initiative that went through in 2018, which was voters should be able to pick their politicians, not politicians picking their voters. So to end gerrymandering, which, to be fair, both parties do when they're in power. But the Republicans have been in power a lot longer because they had been controlling the state Senate for 40 years as a result of gerrymandering, and had the House since 2010. So these new districts, which an independent commission put through after the census, was the first time we could try this out. And it has 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and 3 independents. And they drew these districts to be as fair as possible, as competitive as possible. And with Ann Arbor, they took the northwest part of it the one way, because Ann Arbor does tend to be a pretty liberal community. They could slice off the northwest part and attach it up to Livingston County. So I have a bit of Washtenaw, which is quite progressive, and it goes up to Livingston County all the way to Genoa Township, which is very conservative. And it goes over to Jackson County. So this was a really hard district to win. As they saw it, it was 50-50 and maybe leaning Democrat, but nobody knew quite for sure. And so what it really needed, well, one, it needed someone to run, because a lot of people already in office didn't necessarily want to run because they might lose, and I had nothing to lose if I did it. Well, I did, my career, but beyond that. But basically, I could see how I was the right person to run for this district, because as a journalist, I know how to hear 2 sides of issues. My whole experience has been listening, has been having to be bipartisan, at least on paper. So I could see how I was really maybe the right person to do this. So I talked to a bunch of people for about a week, and kind of all the kind of biggies in politics in Michigan. And the first call was to a woman who runs something called My List, which is like an Emily's List in Michigan, and Barb Fuller's organization supports female candidates. And she's been around politics a long time, and I was told to give her a call first to see if I should run. And in fact, I thought that she was expecting my call, but she wasn't. And I said, "Oh, hi, I was told to give you a call, Jennifer Conlin. I'm supposed to maybe talk to you about running for state rep in House District 48. And she said, "I have no idea who you are. I have somebody else in mind." And I was like, "Okay, great." I was about to hang up because I was like, phew, I'm off the hook. Because I really did feel like I couldn't say no if there was no one else to do it, because we also knew this could maybe flip the House, this seat. And she's like, "Wait," before I hung up, and I go, "What?" And she says, "Who are you and why would you want to run?" And it was the first time I kind of had to articulate that to her. And I talked about reproductive rights being important to me, and gun safety rights, and education, and the climate change problems. And after we spoke for 10 minutes, she said, and it's funny, I sat with her 2 days ago as Governor Whitmer signed the 1931 repealing the abortion ban, and that was Monday. And she was next to me, and I said, "You were the first phone call." And she said, "You know what? I think this is your destiny. I think you're meant to do this." And it was only after 10 minutes she said that. She said, "I think your middle name begins with a T for trouble, and this is what you're going to do, and you're the candidate." And I thought, well, if I was able to talk her into that in 10 minutes, maybe I am. And I got off the phone, and Dan's looking at me, and I go, I mean, maybe I am the right person to run, because this woman thinks so, and she's been around politics a long time. So that's kind of how I ended up deciding to do it.
That's great.
Yeah, I kind of have a question specifically for Chris. So you said that you worked on the Obama campaign when you were in high school. How do you think that like Greenhills like reacted to you wanting to form that, and like what the environment was like when you were like, oh, I want to take action, I want to like do something to help.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember now. No, but there's back in that time, there was a real energy throughout Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor basically was done with the Bush years. I mean, you'd be sitting at a dinner party and you know, you could basically budget in maybe 20 minutes for people to complain about the Iraq War and George W. Bush. And there was just this question of, you know, who's going to step up, who's going to run. I mean, there was Hillary and Obama. We all, there were these kind of debates about, you know, experience versus a newcomer. And just, could we really dare to believe that a black man could be president? You know, was it time? Was it possible? And Greenhills was very supportive in terms of giving me, you know, a classroom. There was already the structure built in for clubs, and there was no problem here. We got a classroom at lunch to meet. And, you know, believe it or not, though, the student body at Greenhills, there was still a Republican contingent. There were still people, students for McCain might have consisted of like 2 or 3 people, but it was still there. And I think but the biggest uphill battle in any club is basically getting people to participate, getting people to show up, getting people to, not just during the school day where that's easy, but to come out on weekends and knock doors, to do a vote. And one of the things we actually did was a voter registration campaign for the seniors. I think they're, you know, because of the size and when you turn 18, maybe there were only 4, but, you know, we got that. And then also we would send people out into the community, especially downtown around the university, to get New Michigan students registered. So you know, Greenhills was about as supportive as I could be. You know, there's that, I think that uphill battle maybe is among your fellow students of, you know, some of the people say, oh, what does it matter? They're both crooks anyway. Somebody told me, I think they told me like, Obama's part of that Chicago machine, you know, he's dirty just like the rest of them. But that's what high school is, right? It's an exercise in finding out what you believe, standing up for what you believe, and then taking action in the way that you can. And so, I don't know, I'm grateful for that opportunity. I'm grateful that Greenhills gave us the space to do clubs and take initiative.
Yeah, I have one follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
So once you started this, like I've like been a part of a couple of campaigns too. Like
Yeah.
I feel like I'm very like active in that. And I'm just wondering, when you started this campaign, when you started doing this, did you know that you wanted to do this for the rest of your life? Did you know that like you wanted to kind of be in the realm of politics, or were you just like?
Well, do you mean kind of when I was a junior in high school, or do you mean kind of more recently?
Junior in high school.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And kind of looking back, it's hard to say. There was, I think, one of the things about campaigns is that great sweep of emotion, feeling like you're at a point where things might actually change. You know, I love knocking doors. I think, similar to, I know Jennifer does, that politics is a conversation. It's a conversation you have on doors. It's a conversation with yourself on, hey, am I with 100% of what this candidate believes? Am I with 80%? Am I with 60%? Am I with just enough of it that I think he'll be better than the next guy? For sure. But I think that what I, even at that time, I remember saying, I want to work in politics, but the thing of politics is that it's a win or lose. You have to keep winning. And for a while, it looked like Obama wasn't going to win the primary. And I think the other thing is you look at the points where you experience failure, right? You call for that, voter registration drive, and maybe only 4 people show up. Or, you know, I did experience this a lot where people would kind of say, oh, aren't you a little young to be doing this? Aren't you? Or you know, people on the doors being like, oh, Obama, he's inexperienced, get out, you know. And I mean, you know, on the phones too, you will have I had some people, you know, actually say some racial slurs to me and stuff too. So like, there was always that duality, I like the emotion, you know, I like the emotion of it, but I know it can, you know, there's a lot of pain that comes with it if you lose, if you see the attacks that people do on people that you respect so much. And so I would say no, I didn't know that I was gonna I didn't know that I wanted to be in politics. I think I was more interested in policy. I think that the foundation I had in math and marrying math and writing to make kind of economics and social sciences, that was the part I wanted to be into. But politics, it was just that precarious nature where you say, I don't know. Can I live with the chance that 51% that I lose, or it's like just losing by 1% is enough to lose an election. So.
So how about, do you each have one question more each for our guests maybe that both of them can respond to?
Yeah. So, kind of taking it back to Greenhills, what is something at Greenhills you guys absolutely loved being a part of? Or what were you most proud of from your Greenhills experience?
Yeah. There's so many answers, but just to choose one, I think when I look back and what I'm most proud of, it was my experience on stage, being part of the theater program. My junior year, and as you two as juniors know, that's your hardest year. You're trying to get everything in line for college applications. But in the fall of my junior year, I was able to get the role of John Proctor in The Crucible. And it was an emotional role. It was one that kind of took me to a dark place, honestly, trying to inhabit this character who betrays kind of the things he holds dear, but also at his core is a good person. And that experience, I've never had anything like that. And I think just to see the way to work as part of a team, as part of a cast where, people would really, from the people backstage who, there was one point where I had to eat some soup and people were like, oh, we'll microwave it for you so you can, don't have to eat cold soup on stage, Those memories you'll just never forget. Feeling like you finally nailed it on the last of the third shows, feeling like, hey, this is the day I want to get everything right, and then kind of celebrating as a cast after. I think that's the moment I can point to. And actually, okay, and then one more I will say, I got elected to be the president of my senior class, and giving the commencement address. As Mr. Fayroian always says, Greenhills chooses not to bring in outside speakers. They choose to have our teacher give the address, and then the class president give the address. Not the valedictorian, I'll note, but that was just a moment where I could express some real love and gratitude to the school, and and I felt like I brought a little bit. I really tried to call out the little bits of my class and my experience that meant the most to me. So those two places, I don't know. I don't think I'll ever actually experience both those highs in the same way.
Great. I remember both the play and the speech.
Yes.
Nice. I would just say for me, it was all the kind of teamwork you're talking about, playing on the field hockey team, being in musicals and plays, working on the Evergreen, working on the yearbook, which was stuff I did, that got me writing. So I think it was really kind of all that teamwork. But looking back, obviously, being on the student council was great. And Lyman Casey was president. Teresa Casey was, alumni director until recently. Her younger brother was president, and I was vice president. But we were quite a team. I did do something maybe I feel badly about now, which is I decided we didn't need cheerleaders. I was a young feminist, and I just locked up their little uniforms and said there will no longer be cheerleading at Greenhills. And I think Mrs. Friedlander was behind me. But now I see last weekend there was the high school dance competition, and you see it's like a real sport. So I kind of feel badly about the cheerleading, but we also put up a suggestion box, and the head of the school at the time was Mr. Gramantine, and we decided we needed, the students need more voice in what goes on, and so we put this suggestion box, a little blue plastic mailbox, and everybody could put their suggestions in, most of which were why don't we have a popcorn machine and a pool table, or why do we have detention? And I think I saw Mr. Gramantine once throw the suggestion box into a corner. I think it was really annoying, but it was but I really enjoyed doing my little student governance at the time. And then later I ended up becoming chair of the board, president of the board of Greenhills, and got to do another kind of governance as an alum. With Peter.
That's right. I can see Jim Gramantine throwing the suggestion box down the hallway. Don't get any ideas, but I'm always open to suggestions. All right, one more question each.
Yeah, so I think my final question would just be, what's one thing you would tell any student at Greenhills who kind of has the similar ambitions as you both did, students who really want to be politically active, really want to put themselves out there? What's one thing you would say to them?
think what I would say is do those things that take you outside of your comfort zone. And it doesn't really matter what they are, right? It could be, playing JV basketball when you have no business on a basketball team. It could be, trying to be in the Ocean Science Bowl trivia when you know nothing about ocean science. I think the thing about politics is you have to have a breadth of knowledge that you know a little bit about everything, but you also know how to find the people that you trust, the people that you believe that can advise you, and the people that help inform what your positions are going to be. And I would say specifically take the time to talk to your teachers, because sometimes it's hard to remember, but they have lives and experiences outside of school. It was actually Mr. Fayroian one time who, he said one time, bipartisanship runs deep in Chris's blood. And it was something almost like I hadn't even really thought about it about my own self, but it was something, it was like, okay, I guess that is true. And I think similarly, that my teachers like Dr. Williams, Mr. Jones, even, my French teacher, Madame Novak, you could have these conversations that would change your worldview, or you'd walk away saying, I hadn't considered that. So I would say, find your mentors. Also, look to your alums. I remember calling Eugene Kang. He was the body man for Obama back in the day. I sent him an email and actually asking for an internship. He said, no, I don't think we can swing that. But he said, get involved in your local government, because that's really the place where things happen. Just start there. And I remember saying, I don't know if I'm going to do that. But it came around. Those words ring true now. It's like in local government, that's where you see the action hit the rubber hit the road, so to speak. And those lessons, you don't hear them at the time, but later on, they start to come true. And so just remember the things that people here teach you, because they might not be useful to you then, but they'll be useful in the long term.
Yeah, and I am now obsessed with, everybody going into politics. Not quite, but developing political leadership for the future. And I personally didn't even really know how important state politics were until probably 6-7 years ago, when we really started to see how the other party had been really maneuvering their way into state legislatures, and how many decisions are made at the state level. And obviously we saw that when Roe was overturned, that it goes back to the states. Voting rights come down to your Secretary of State. And I just now see how important local government is in a way I never had kind of really given credit to. So now, also, yes, come back to Michigan, because our demographics are going down, where our birth rate is going down in Michigan. And so I have 3 children, all of who live on the East Coast, and I'm like, you guys got to come back to Michigan, because it's a great state and, an important state, especially politically. We are one of the states that always determines the presidential outcome. And my advice would be get engaged now. You can feel free to work on my campaign. I'll be running again in another year, right. And Chris is. But there are so many campaigns you can work on, and nonprofits that are involved on the periphery of a lot of campaigns. And I would just say get involved. Because you don't kind of think you can make a difference, and you really can. The fact that I sit there now and I get to press that button making LGBT rights part of the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act is just amazing to me, especially as I have a daughter who is LGBTQ. And so it's just, get involved. Don't think that your voice doesn't matter.
If I could just jump in, I think I'd be doing a disservice to the city of Ann Arbor if I didn't plug a couple opportunities. There's if people are passionate about students being able to come back to Ann Arbor, to be able to afford rent, to have the housing that they need to live here. There's something called the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board, run by the city of Ann Arbor. It's a joint project between the city and the county. And we're looking for a youth member. I think you have to be at least 16, but we're looking for a youth member. And that board, I'm the council liaison to that board, and we look at where money is going from giving people housing vouchers to food programs and warming centers. So that's one option. And then secondly, council members can take on interns if in exchange for school credit. So, reach out to me, reach out to your there's a few council members who don't have an intern. Some of them already do. But if there's something for a summer or if we could work with Greenhills to kind of give you some school credit, we might be able to do that as well. So, and then also, yes, I think you can learn so much on campaigns and on local campaigns. You really can. There's so much data now. There's so much things done through the mobile app. I was using clipboards, but now it's all through mobile apps, and you can see exactly what voter contact does in terms of changing minds. And so I would encourage you to get involved on any campaign. It almost doesn't matter. City, county, anywhere, state.
One of my best canvassers was, a 10th grader.
Yeah.
She was
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
It's great. Great words to end on. How much fun this has been. For me, I'm so proud of you both. Thank you, Nicole and Parini, and so proud of our alums to my left, Chris and Jennifer. Thanks so much for coming back
Thank you.
and having
Thank
the
you.
conversation. And thanks for tuning in if you've been watching this, and look forward to the next round with more wonderful alums like you.
Go Griffins.
Go Griffins.